You know, funny thing, I could never really quite get into Kamen Rider Blade. Now, I know the first batch of episodes is kind of a trudge through, and you just kind of have to grin and bear it for a while. But no, it was more of an aesthetic thing. He just looks a little plain compared to a lot of writers. Luckily, Kamen Rider Decade gave me a good look at Blade King form, and I cannot say the same thing about him. I'm really glad it gave me a good look at the design, and now I'm going to give you a good look at the design, courtesy of the Kiwami Tamashii line. Again, we're dealing with a tiny one, and according to my infinitely useful grid board, he's come up at about 4 3/4 inches, 5 if you include the horn, so he's actually a little taller than the Agito I've already reviewed. Now there's a lot to get to here, and it's all in the details, so we're starting out fast with the head. You can see the segmented eyes are represented even though this is a very small toy compared to everything else. And, once again, look at that tiny little green dot right there in his head, that little forehead gem. It always impresses me when they actually work that in. You can see there's a ton of molded detailing and gorgeous gold paint apps all throughout this toy's head alone. Wait till you see the rest of it. You can also see all of Blade's little emblems. He's got a really fierce face thanks to the SIC's style. And another spade on the side of the head. Moving down, we start to see the cards that are molded in, since the armor in the series is formed when all of the cards come together. You can see all of them molded in exactly where they're supposed to be, and all designed well enough that you can actually tell exactly which ones they are. This is one reason why I really appreciate the action figure lines for Kamen Rider. They really get the details right. There's a lot going on here. And on an American toy, I think a lot of this might get missed. And you can see the fully painted absorber right there, molded onto his left arm, not removable by the way. The beetle that appears on his normal henshin card, molded in right there in the center on top of a painted blue spade symbol. Looking great, and here we go with what SIC is known for. A lot of cracks in the armor. I'm not quite sure why they went with that design. It does give him a more gritty look, which I suppose is what they'd like going for. You can see a lot of the asymmetrical detail here as well. And the blade buckle. Fully cast, fully painted. You can even see the strap is made of cards, just like it is on the show. One more emblem. And finishing off with the armor, you can see the rest of the cards molded into the armor on his legs. Which the toy is so small, I'm kind of struggling to actually get all of this in shot without my camera going out of focus. I mean, just so you know the size that we're dealing with here, here's my usual representation. These things are tiny. To fit that much molded detailing into a toy that small, that is what really impresses me about this line, and especially about this design. And it really doesn't stop there, because the articulation on this thing is fantastic as well, just as it was with Agito. You've got 2 joints in the neck, one at the top and bottom of the neck, as well as a lot of different hinges making the shoulder. This is the part that's going to get problematic. The shoulder guards are pegged in from the sides, so they can move like this, but they really can't move out of the way of the arm, which does limit the articulation. Now, luckily there's plenty of joints in there, so you can kind of work around it and kind of adapt to it. But it takes a little bit of creativity, and it takes a little bit of working. You really have to know how the toy works in order to get some of the poses right, as well as actually get the arm up to a more suitable position for whatever poses you want to have. You also got that ball joint in the chest, rather than a waist joint, which still works just fine, serves the purpose very well. Through the arms, as I mentioned, you have a lot of joints up in the shoulder, but you've also got a double jointed elbow, including a ball joint at the top of the forearm, giving you also a rotation as well, which you can rotate up here along with that, and of course the wrist rotates since it's all ball jointed. Down here, the hips, just like the SICs I've reviewed before, and just like Agito, these are a little bit more limited because they kind of conform to human movement and rotation limitations a little bit more. You do have a swivel there, as well as a double jointed knee, which gets all the way around, as well as your ball jointed ankle. Well, that's actually incorrect. It's a hinge going up and down, as well as a peg moving it side to side, so you can slant the foot and get a more stable pose. Keep in mind, This thing's less than 5 inches tall. It is an extraordinary little feat of engineering. Of course, everything from this line seems to be so far. And now we get into everyone's favorite part of an action figure, the accessories. Since this is a Japanese Kamen Rider figure, it's no surprise that the hands are swappable. You get these, which are gripping hands, which are horribly out of focus. You can see the knuckles have been painted individually to match the gloves on the show, and there's even some molded-in detailing for accuracy. This is for gripping onto his weapons, which I will show you in a bit. There are 2 more hands, however. Open hands. Which, very strange open hands, because they're not really relaxed. It looks like they should be gripping something very large. I'm not quite sure what the design decision was. However, they do come in handy. But more important to Blade are his swords, and of course, being king form, you get the King Rouser. Again, there is an impeccable level of detail to this piece alone. All the molded and painted areas on the blade, all the way to the tip. And much to my surprise, or maybe I would have been expecting this if I had actually seen Kamen Rider Blade, he comes with a normal blade rouser as well, once again, fully painted and realized. The molded-in details on the crest, as well as the fanning-out card holder, all molded in. It does not fold out, by the way, just a heads up. Once again, we see a few spade emblems. We see a lot of nice detailing and paint job going on. Now, unfortunately, these weapons pose 2 problems. Number 1, they're not painted on the back sides. This is something of a confusing point to me. Because normally they are very good about this. I know Blade King form is a little bit more expensive than the usual SIC KT, so they might have hit a budget issue over here. But, no, this is kind of distracting. It kind of works out because, especially on the King Rouser, there's really only one side you want to see anyway. It's the side that actually has all the emblems going on. But on the normal Blade Rouser, both sides are identical. And at least I would have expected to see the edge of the blade painted like it was here on both sides. That's a little bit of a disappointment. The other one is, this thing is just really freaking big. If you notice, the handle on mine is a little bit slanted. And I can actually demonstrate that thanks to my little grid in the background. This is because before this review, I was posing this thing with the sword down here, hanging out of his gripping hand. The weight of it actually bent the handle a little bit. So, for about the next 2 weeks, he'll be holding it like this to compensate. But in the meantime, I would not recommend him holding that blade for any long-term poses. If you're thinking long-term posing and display for him, well, unfortunately, you pretty much either have to have it straight down, or take advantage of the peg on his back and the hole in the sword to actually attach the sword to him. This is probably why the blade was actually painted on this one, because it is actually visible from this angle. Now, this is unfortunate. The design on the blade is just way too heavy for such a small figure, and the handle is just way too thin. So, long term, just use the blade rouser as a display piece. Keep that sword for special occasion if you want to be hanging onto it. Or you take those wide open hands and help support the weight a little bit. You know, have it holding the hilt or the blade, whichever you think looks best on him. It'll help support the weight, it'll keep the King Rouser in display, and you're not going to end up with a bent handle. The more I delve into the SIC Kiwami Tamashii line, the more I kind of regret getting into it late. There's a lot of figures like Ryuki and Faiz that are a little harder to find now. But the ones I get, I do like sharing with you guys because they are incredibly detailed, articulated, and dirt cheap compared to most other Rider action figures. Seriously, go check it out at HobbyLink Japan right now. I put the link in the description. For as much as you get out of this toy, between accessories, detail, level of articulation, and just how awesome this design looks, the price is phenomenal. And while you're at HLJ, check out the other ones they have, because I really want to keep sharing this line with you guys. It's something that is really easy to start collecting and really affordable. But there's only so many options. Which ones do you guys want to see?